A delivery man beat an 87-year-old veteran like he was just some helpless old man. No one stepped in until 15 minutes later, the veteran's son showed up. And he wasn't alone. Backed by a strike team, he proved that some wounds awaken. A force no one should ever underestimate. It happened outside a corner grocery store on a quiet Wednesday morning in Dayton, Ohio. Walter Gaines, dressed in his usual pressed flannel shirt and Vietnam vet cap, stood patiently beside the store. Entrance, his cane in one hand and a small American flag pin glinting from his chest pocket. The package hadn't been delivered to his address, so he came to ask about it in person, just like he always did, the old-fashioned way. The delivery van, white and dented, screeched into the lot minutes later. The man who stepped out was young, built like a linebacker and visibly irritated. Something about a mix-up with addresses. Voices rose. Then, without warning, the man shoved Walter hard. The old man crumpled like paper against the curb, his cane clattering to the ground. The driver spit a curse, tossed the package near his feet and stormed off, leaving Walter groaning in pain under the indifferent gaze of two onlookers who quickly disappeared into their cars. Blood stained the collar of Walter's shirt. His hand trembled as he tried to sit up, reaching for his cane with a shaky breath. A retired soldier, a man who had endured decades of life and war, now beaten like he was nobody, forgotten, dismissed, humiliated. But 15 minutes later, everything changed. A black SUV pulled up slow and silent. Out stepped a tall man in his 40s, calm but burning with restrained fury. Two others followed, flanking him like shadows. This wasn't a regular visit. Daniel Gaines had arrived, and he hadn't come alone. Walter Gaines wasn't just some old man shuffling down the sidewalk with a cane, at least not to those who knew him before the gray settled into his beard and the years bent his back. In his small Ohio neighborhood, he was Mr. Gaines, the man with the perfectly mowed lawn, the polished boots by the front door, and a folded American flag encased in glass above the mantel. That flag wasn't for decoration. It was a reminder, a story. A life once lived in jungles and deserts far away, where every breath could have been his last. Neighbors nodded politely, some even stopped to chat, but fewer and fewer each year. The world moved faster now, too fast to remember men like Walter. Veterans Day came and went, and though a few school kids left thank you cards taped to his mailbox, he often sat alone on his porch, sipping black coffee from a chipped Marine Corps mug. Remembering the names of friends who never came home, his body bore the map of time, a stiff right knee from a parachute jump gone wrong, a scar behind his ear from shrapnel, and hands that shook not from fear, but from years of holding too much. Still, Walter never complained, not when the Social Security checks came late, not when the neighbor's dog tore up his garden, not even when arthritis made it hard to grip his coffee cup. That morning, when he noticed the missing package, a special shipment of model aircraft kits he'd ordered for a local veterans craft project, he didn't call anyone. He got dressed, as always, with dignity, khakis, his veteran cap, and the pocket knife he carried since 1962. He walked the 6 blocks to the store, slowly, each step a testament to his stubborn resilience. Inside, the clerk shrugged. "Delivery guy must have left it out back or at the wrong house," she said, barely looking up from her phone. Walter nodded, thanked her softly, and turned to leave. That's when the van pulled up. He recognized it from previous deliveries. Same dented bumper, same thumping bass rattling the doors. The driver jumped out, talking on a Bluetooth headset, gesturing wildly as he approached. Walter, ever polite, waited until the man ended his call. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady. "I think there was a mistake with the delivery." "What? Are you the mailman now?" the man snapped, towering over him. "Back off, Grandpa. I've got 30 more stops." Walter tried again. "It's just, those packages were for a veterans." That's when it happened. No warning, no pause. The man shoved him hard. Walter stumbled, fell backward, and hit the pavement with a sickening thud. The world tilted. His cane rolled out of reach. His breath caught. And just across the parking lot, inside a silver sedan, a woman clutched her purse tightly and pretended not to see. Her eyes met Walter's for a moment, and then she looked away. But someone else was already looking for Walter, and he was much less likely to look away. The box wasn't large, but it mattered. Inside were 5 model plane kits, carefully selected from a veteran-run shop online. Each replica, a different aircraft Walter had either flown in or supported during his service. The project was simple: build them with a few younger vets at the community center and hang them from the ceiling for Memorial Day. Walter liked projects like that, hands busy, stories shared quietly over glue and paint. He had been tracking the delivery for days, but when the expected box didn't show up, he figured it was a simple mishap. Maybe left at the wrong door. It happened. But the bigger frustration wasn't the missing package. It was the tone the store clerk used when he came to ask about it. Dismissive, like he was just some fussy old man bothering her during her shift. The van arrived just as he turned to leave. Its side panel bore the faded logo of a third-party courier company, the kind that popped up during the pandemic and never really went away. Out jumped a delivery guy in his 20s, 6'2", built like he benched for fun, with a phone glued to his ear and sunglasses that reflected only his own scowl. Walter waited respectfully for the man to finish yelling into his headset about a missed tip. He didn't like interrupting. When the call ended, he stepped forward, speaking calmly. "Excuse me, son. I believe you may have left a package of mine at the wrong address. I just wanted to..." The man didn't even look at him. "Talk to dispatch. I just dropped boxes. I understand, but I think it might help if we just looked in the back." The driver's head snapped up. "You think I got time to babysit some geezer's mail?" He took a step closer, towering over Walter like a storm cloud. "Why don't you go back to your porch and feed the birds or whatever it is you people do?" Walter didn't flinch. His voice remained level. "No need for disrespect. I served this country so you could have the right to say what you just did. I'm only asking." The driver's laugh was cold and sharp. "Oh, great! Another hero with a flag pin and a guilt trip." That's when the box, Walter's box, was tossed onto the pavement like it was nothing. No apology, no explanation. Just a scuffed package skidding across the concrete, landing at Walter's feet like a final insult. Then the push came. Sudden. Brutal. Walter went down hard, and while his body hit the ground, something else cracked open. Something in the heart of a man who had seen war, endured pain, and outlived too many comrades. But this humiliation in broad daylight, this was different. This was personal. Back at the community center, one of the younger vets stared at his phone. A name was on the screen, calling Daniel Gaines. And when Daniel called, it usually meant trouble. Or justice, sometimes both. The asphalt was still warm from the morning sun, but it felt like ice against Walter's cheek. For a moment he didn't move, his brain catching up with what his body already knew. Pain bloomed along his ribs, and his left wrist throbbed from the impact. He'd fallen harder than he had in decades. Not even the jump at Da Nang had rattled him like this. He blinked, trying to focus. A smear of blood clouded the lens of his glasses, and the world tilted sideways. Somewhere above him, tires squealed as the white van peeled out of the lot. The driver didn't look back. Walter reached for his cane, only to find it had rolled several feet away. He pressed his palms to the pavement, trying to push himself up, but his left arm gave out with a sharp jolt of pain. His breath caught in his chest. At that moment, he wasn't a veteran. He wasn't a father. He was just an old man on the ground, struggling to sit up while the world watched and chose not to care. 2 cars had been parked nearby. One pulled out quickly after the commotion, the driver's face turned toward the dashboard. The other held a woman in her 60s, gripping her steering wheel with white knuckles. Her eyes met Walter's, briefly. Then she looked away. She never stepped out. Walter's heart pounded, not from fear, but from something heavier, humiliation. Not because he had been knocked down, but because nobody had helped him up. He sat there for nearly 5 minutes, breathing slow, gathering the shards of his pride. He finally pulled himself into a seated position against the curb, clutching his side with one hand and his broken glasses with the other. The box lay nearby, its corner crushed, contents rattling loosely inside. He didn't reach for it. Inside the store, the young clerk peeked out the window, then returned to her phone. She didn't call 911. She didn't even call her manager. Walter closed his eyes, trying to slow the burning behind them. He thought about Mary, his late wife, and what she'd say if she saw him like this. "Don't you let the world make you small," she used to whisper when his hands shook too much to eat. He tried to laugh. It came out more like a cough. Across town, in a security office filled with surveillance screens and muted radios, a phone buzzed on a steel table. A man picked it up and stared at the message. "Your father's been hurt. At Green's grocery. Looks bad." He didn't speak. He just turned to the others in the room. 3 men in plain clothes, silent and waiting. "Gear up," Daniel said. "Now." The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and quiet dread. Walter lay on the bed with a thin blanket pulled over his legs, an IV drip feeding into the back of his hand. His face was bruised, left eye swollen, nearly shut, and a nurse had just finished stitching a gash on his temple. He hadn't said much, just gave his name and military ID when asked, and then stared at the ceiling like it was a sky full of ghosts. Across the city, in a modest but fortified office behind an unmarked door, Daniel Gaines sat reviewing contractor schedules on his laptop. His security firm mostly handled risk assessments and high-value transports these days. The action was rare. He liked it that way. After 20 years in the Marines and another 10 in Black Ops contracting, Daniel had earned his peace and guarded it like a man who knew exactly what it cost. His phone buzzed. It was Morgan, one of the younger vets from the community center. He never called unless something was wrong. "Daniel," he said, voice low and urgent, "it's your dad. He was attacked outside Green's. Ambulance just took him. It wasn't an accident. Some delivery guy shoved him down. Hard." Daniel didn't respond right away. He stood, walked to the window and stared out at the slow-moving cars below. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "Which hospital?" "County General." "Did anyone get a plate on the van?" "Already pulled it from the store cam, sending it now." Daniel ended the call, screen already lighting up with a photo of the white van and a blurry license plate. He turned around slowly. In the corner of the room sat 2 of his most trusted teammates, Ty "Skid" McAllen, a logistics genius with a twitchy knee and a dry sense of humor, and Luis Herrera, quiet as a shadow, but lethal with a tactical read. Neither man asked questions. They had seen Daniel in this mode before, controlled, focused, dangerous. He tapped the table twice. "Strike protocol," he said. "Low profile, rapid containment. No weapons drawn unless it escalates." Ty raised an eyebrow. "Containment. Of what exactly?" Daniel met his eyes. "The man who put my father in a hospital," he said flatly, "and whatever kind of trash pile he's standing on." Luis was already grabbing gear bags. 15 minutes later, they were on the road. Black SUV, no plates, no chatter, just the rhythmic pulse of tires over pavement and the building tension of men who knew that certain lines once crossed changed everything. Daniel didn't speak for most of the ride. But as they neared the hospital, he reached into the glove box and pulled out something small, an old challenge coin, smooth from years of wear. It had belonged to Walter, carried it every day since '72. He closed his fist around it. This wasn't just retaliation. This was family. Daniel Gaines wasn't built for small talk. He moved like someone always measuring distance, between himself and exits, between silence and escalation. Those who knew him from his past didn't ask if he could handle something. They asked how long it would take. He had the quiet presence of a man who had seen too much and learned to keep it folded inside, like a classified file never meant for public eyes. Born on a base in Okinawa, raised on discipline and ceremony, Daniel's first memory was of watching his father polish his boots before church. Walter never bragged about his service. He didn't need to. The medals in the drawer, the folded flag above the fireplace, and the silence between certain dates each year said enough. When Daniel turned 18, he enlisted, not to follow in his father's footsteps, but to earn the right to walk beside him. He rose through the ranks fast, scout sniper, then force recon, then joint operations overseas where patches were removed and rules got blurry, missions that never made headlines, hostages recovered, cartels dismantled, embassies protected under blackout. For a decade, he walked the line between chaos and control, and he never once left a man behind. But the work took its toll. His marriage ended quietly. No kids, no permanent home, just his gear, his routines, and a growing list of names he visited on Memorial Day. When he finally left the service, he built a private security firm, not a flashy one, no billboards or social media presence, just discreet, effective protection for high-risk clients. And sometimes for people who didn't even know they needed protecting. Walter had always told him, real strength doesn't posture, it acts when needed. Daniel took that to heart. So when he saw his father in that hospital bed, bruised and wired to machines, something ancient stirred. Not rage, not yet. Something colder, more precise. The man who had dodged bullets and extracted assets under fire now stood at his father's bedside, placing the old challenge coin gently in Walter's hand. "You're not alone, Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've got this." Behind him, Ty and Luis stood at attention, not out of ceremony but instinct. They knew what came next wouldn't be loud, it would be surgical. Daniel's missions always were. He stepped out of the room, pulling up the delivery company's records on a tablet. The driver's name appeared, Marcus Klein. Spotty employment history, 3 complaints filed for aggression, 1 unresolved claim involving an elderly woman in Cincinnati. Daniel's jaw tightened. He tapped the screen twice. "Found him," he said. Luis leaned in. "Where?" Daniel's eyes didn't move from the screen. "Home address, North Side, lives alone." Ty exhaled slowly. "Guess it's time for a visit." Daniel nodded once. No anger in his voice, just certainty. "Let's remind him," he said, "that some men are never truly unprotected." They didn't call themselves a strike team anymore, not officially. In civilian life, they were consultants, logistics contractors, or just old friends doing a job. But when Daniel Gaines sent the message, 3 words, pack, light, quiet, they knew exactly what it meant. First to arrive was Reggie "Smoke" Holloway, a demolitions expert with a preacher's calm and a gambler's grin. He'd been running private risk mitigation out of Texas, but when he saw the text, he didn't ask what happened. He just got in his truck and drove. Reggie had once carried Daniel on his back through enemy fire in Kandahar. That kind of bond didn't expire. Next came Emma Bird Santoro, lean, intense, and still faster than most 20-year-olds in a foot chase. Former NSA field tech turned freelance cyber surveillance. She showed up in a Jeep she never explained, already armed with satellite views of Marcus Klein's neighborhood, delivery routes, and 3 alternate exit plans. Luis and Ty were already in. That made 5. They met in a cold storage facility Daniel had used before for quiet debriefs. No windows, lead-lined walls, just a folding table, 4 steel chairs, and a map spread across the surface. A single bulb cast long shadows across their faces. Daniel didn't make speeches. He outlined facts. Walter Gaines, 87, veteran. Assaulted. By Marcus Klein, a courier with a history of violent behavior. Local police filed an initial report. No arrest, no follow-up. He looked each of them in the eye. This is a show of presence. We find him. We deliver a message he won't forget. No bruises that don't heal. No weapons unless he escalates, but he will remember. Reggie nodded. Subtle as a freight train, then. Emma smirked. I've already pinged his last delivery route. He's due at a warehouse on Southfield in 20 minutes. I can loop the cams for 15. Ty cracked his knuckles. I'll bring the sedative spray, just in case he gets ideas. Luis said nothing. He just slid a black duffel across the table. Inside, tactical gloves, zip ties, body cams, and a patch with a falcon stitched in white thread. The old team emblem. Not military anymore, but the meaning was clear. This wasn't about breaking laws. It was about restoring balance. As they loaded into the SUV, the silence was heavy, but focused. Years had passed since their last mission together, but the rhythm hadn't faded. Roles slipped back into place. Communication was minimal, movements fluid, like a single organism with 5 minds and 1 pulse. Daniel sat up front, eyes on the road, heart steady. He wasn't angry. He was ready, and somewhere on the north side, Marcus Klein was unloading packages, laughing into his phone, completely unaware that 5 professionals were coming for him. Not to hurt him, not yet, just to make him understand. This time, the old man didn't fall alone. Marcus Klein lived in a cookie-cutter neighborhood on the edge of town, rows of beige siding, trimmed hedges, and wind chimes that didn't match the silence beneath them. From the outside, it looked like any middle-class cul-de-sac. Safe, predictable. But when Strike Team Alpha rolled in, they knew how to read between the lines. Emma parked 2 blocks away and ran a full digital sweep from her laptop. House is rented under a shell company tied to a defunct logistics startup. Utilities are in his cousin's name, classic cover for someone hiding something. She tapped the screen. 3 noise complaints, 1 domestic disturbance, no charges filed. Luis and Ty did a walk by in plain clothes. Subtle, intentional. What they saw confirmed what the data hinted at. Klein wasn't just a jerk with a short fuse. He was a predator with a pattern. Neighbors avoided him. Packages piled on his porch and the lawn was overgrown. The kind of house people whispered about but never confronted. Back at base, Daniel reviewed surveillance from Emma's drone. Klein came and went erratically, usually midday, never made eye contact, always talking to someone on his phone, someone he called boss. That one word shifted everything. This isn't just about my father anymore, Daniel said. This guy's connected to something bigger, Reggie agreed. Delivery front could be a cover. Drugs, contraband, intimidation. It had explained the attitude and why nobody's put him in cuffs. They didn't wait. The next morning, they deployed. Luis entered the backyard through an unlocked gate, quiet as fog, while Emma killed the security cameras remotely. Reggie and Ty flanked the front, no guns drawn, but both wore reinforced gloves under their sleeves. Daniel stood at the center of the driveway, arms crossed, waiting. At 11:12 a.m., Klein returned, slamming his car door and muttering into his phone. The moment he spotted Daniel, he paused. His body shifted. His hand hovered near the front pocket of his hoodie. That hesitation cost him. Luis was already behind him. Ty moved first, stepping in. Marcus Klein. We need to have a conversation, Klein sneered. You got no badge. You touch me, I sue. Daniel stepped forward, calm but cold. You assaulted a veteran in broad daylight. My father. Klein's face twisted into something that was supposed to be a smirk. "He got in my way. Old man should have stayed home." Reggie leaned in. "Say that again." Klein didn't. He swung. Wrong move. Ty caught his arm midair. Luis swept his legs. In less than 3 seconds, Klein was face down on his own driveway, zip-tied, groaning. Daniel crouched beside him. "This isn't revenge, it's clarity." He held up Walter's crushed glasses, pulled from the hospital. "You're going to walk into a station, confess what you did, and take your consequences. Or," he let the silence hang, "you'll find out what happens when a man with nothing to prove decides he's had enough." Klein looked up, rage in his eyes, then something else. Fear. That's when he whispered, barely audible, "You think I'm the top? You don't even know who's pulling my strings." Daniel stood. That changed things. Daniel watched Marcus Klein squirm in his restraints, blood trickling from a split lip, but eyes burning with defiance. Not the kind of fear Daniel expected. This was the fear of someone who still believed he was protected. Someone who'd gotten away with too much for too long. Someone backed by men in shadows who didn't care about right or wrong, only about silence and control. But Daniel wasn't interested in shadow games. Klein's muttered warning, "You don't even know who's pulling my strings," stuck in his head as they loaded him into the SUV. Emma already had backup data on his employer, Patriot Arrow Logistics. On paper, a delivery subcontractor. In reality, a dumping ground for violent men too unstable for military re-entry and too cheap for proper oversight. Daniel didn't want to go after a company. He wanted to look his father in the eye and know he had done the right thing, not just the satisfying thing. As they drove, Daniel spoke to no one. His mind played a loop of his father's face in that hospital bed. Not broken, never broken, but betrayed, humiliated. A man who had given everything, left bleeding on a grocery store curb, forgotten by the world he served. And Daniel couldn't forget the last real conversation they had months ago. They had argued politics, leadership, respect. Walter had said something that still rang in Daniel's ears. "Son, you fight the right way or you fight the wrong way. Either one leaves scars, but only one lets you sleep after." At the precinct, the team waited in the parking lot while Daniel walked Klein inside. He told the desk sergeant what happened, played the footage, handed over witness statements Emma had precompiled, and said 6 words that hung in the air like smoke. "He assaults. Another vet, he disappears." Klein tried to laugh, but the sergeant didn't. They took him into custody. Outside, the team stood silent, waiting for Daniel's lead. But he didn't speak right away. He looked at them, friends, warriors, brothers and sisters forged in fire. And then he said something none of them expected. "I'm not going after Patriot Arrow." Ty frowned. "We've got the evidence. We could burn them." Daniel nodded. "Not yet. That's not what my father would do." Reggie raised an eyebrow. "So what would he do?" Daniel glanced down at the coin in his pocket. "He'd speak. Loud and with dignity." Luis nodded. "Then so do we." The next morning, Walter's face lit up on thousands of screens across the country. A video recorded from his hospital bed circulated through veteran forums and news blogs. He didn't ask for vengeance. He asked for change, for respect, for recognition. He ended with 6 quiet words. "Don't forget us. We're still here." And from that moment, something shifted. Because sometimes a son's duty isn't to avenge his father, it's to amplify his voice. 3 weeks later, Walter Gaines stood outside the same grocery store where he had been knocked down. This time, he held a microphone. A small stage had been set up, flanked by flags and folding chairs. The parking lot was filled, veterans in faded uniforms, mothers with children, even strangers who had watched his video and felt something stir. The local news cameras rolled, but Walter wasn't performing. He was testifying. He didn't speak of pain or revenge or anger. He spoke of service, of community, of the quiet dignity of growing old in a country you once defended. He talked about the invisible war some veterans still fight, not overseas, but at home, in the silence of being overlooked. Daniel stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the man who had raised him turn pain into purpose. Walter's voice, though weathered, carried across the lot with the authority of someone who had earned every word. "I didn't expect to be attacked that day," he said plainly, "and I didn't expect anyone to come to my defense. But I should have, because we should expect better from each other, not because we wear a uniform, but because we share a sidewalk." The crowd applauded, some wiping tears. He turned then, eyes finding Daniel's. "My son could have taken justice into his own hands," he said. "He's trained to do so. But instead, he brought something stronger. Witnesses, truth, and a reminder that strength doesn't always raise a fist." Daniel blinked slowly, the weight of that moment settling into his chest like a medal he never expected. Klein remained in custody, awaiting trial not only for the assault, but as a catalyst that helped expose deeper issues inside Patriot Arrow. Logistics. Other victims had come forward. A quiet reckoning had begun. Strike Team Alpha had disbanded again, their mission complete. Emma went back to her cyber work, Reggie to his drills and contracts, Luis and Ty to their low-profile roles. But they stayed connected, quiet protectors, just in case. Walter's model planes were finished. Each hung proudly from the ceiling of the community center's main hall, their wings outstretched like guardians in flight. One of them bore a name under its fuselage, the Quiet Force. Daniel visited his father every Sunday now. They didn't talk about the incident much. They didn't have to. It lived between them, not as a wound, but a bond. One evening, as they watched the sun dip behind the trees, Walter reached into his pocket and pulled out the old challenge coin, the one Daniel had carried during the hardest days. He handed it. "Back, you've earned this," Walter said. Daniel didn't speak. He just nodded, his fingers curling around the coin like it was something holy, because sometimes legacy isn't built in war, it's built in the quiet decisions, the restrained hands, and the words spoken when it would have been easier to stay silent. If this story moved you, we'd love for you to be part of our community. Hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from, and which moment in Walter's journey hit you the hardest? We read every message, and if you're over 50, just know your voice matters here.